Till now, the U.S. has continued its economic and trade activities with Russia. If the U.S. is doing that itself, why it doesn't allow others to do the same? You can set fire to houses while others can't even light lamps. Is that the logic?
Now give the floor to the representative of China.
President. First of all, I congratulate Pakistan upon its successfully presiding over the Council's work. I commend you and your colleagues for your efforts in this month. I'd like to congratulate Panama as it assumes its presidency and wish it great success. Lately, Russia and Ukraine held several rounds of direct negotiations, reached some consensus on humanitarian issues such as the exchange of the prisoners of war, and made positive progress. At the same time, the crisis persists, and the end of the war is nowhere in sight. Large quantities of weapons and ammunition continue to flow into the battlefield, causing new casualties and damage to infrastructure. It worries us to see the expanding variety and range of weapons flowing to the battlefield, as well as their growing lethality and destructive power. It was reported lately that both sides have deployed combat robots on the battlefield, further showing that Russia-Ukraine conflict is increasingly becoming a testing ground for new weapons, and how war is fought could undergo dangerous changes. I wish to reiterate that weapons may win wars, but they cannot bring about lasting peace. The reckless supply of weapons to the battlefield will only intensify confrontation, prolong the conflict, and cause risks of proliferation and inflict further casualties and suffering on the people of both sides and the broader region. The urgent priority is for both sides to work together to de-escalate the situation on the battlefield as soon as possible. They should maintain the momentum of talks, continue to build a consensus, and ultimately reach a comprehensive, lasting, and binding peace agreement. President, since the first day of the war, China has actively advocated resolving disputes by peaceful means, and called on the parties to the conflict to end hostilities, start negotiations, and restore peace sooner than later. Over the past 3 years, guided by the principle for shoulds laid out by President Xi Jinping, we have worked actively for peace and pushed for talks. China will continue to work with the international community to play a constructive role for an early political settlement of the crisis. President, earlier, the U.S. representative once again spread false and slanderous narratives against China. It is completely unacceptable. At previous meetings, I responded to such accusations time and again. Since the U.S. did it again today, I am compelled to respond again to set the record straight. First, China did not start the Ukraine crisis and is not a party to it. China has never supplied lethal weapons to either side of the conflict and has strictly controlled export of dual-use goods, including drones. Second, the parties to the conflict are not under Council sanctions. China has normal trade relations with Russia and Ukraine. By doing so, it doesn't violate international law or breach its international obligations. China's legitimate rights and interests must not be infringed upon. In fact, till now, the U.S. has continued its economic and trade activities with Russia. If the U.S. is doing that itself, why it doesn't allow others to do the same? You can set fire to houses while others can't even light lamps. Is that the logic? Third, the Ukraine crisis is at a critical juncture where we see prospects and hopes for a political solution. It is not right for the U.S. to expect China to play a role in putting early end to the war, but never cease its smear and pressurizing tactics against China. We once again urge the U.S. to stop its pointless blame game, stop shifting responsibilities, and play a more constructive role for the end of the fighting and for the peace talks. Thank you, President.